As a luxury drama YouTube storyteller, I would frame it with elegance and dread, private flights, designer lies, a billionaire glow-up, and a wife who thinks she is being taken to paradise before motherhood. But in one flashing notification, the fantasy cracks open. Another woman, a premium activated, a plan already in motion. From that second on, this story stops being about romance and becomes a glamorous, ruthless fight for survival.
Liam brushed a kiss against my cheek in our Boston brownstone, mentioning a late meeting with a startup. The heavy oak door clicked shut. His tablet, left on the console table, was still warm. Trust can be the most effective blindfold. This story isn't real, but its warning is. My husband just left for an investment meeting that doesn't exist. I picture Liam at breakfast, his smile tense as he reviewed the pitch deck. For our legacy, he'd said, his hand on my growing belly. I should have seen the performance. That biotech deal made him a venture capital star overnight, and it built a chasm between us. He was right about one thing: we were disconnected. After his fund closed, his life was a blur of conferences while I managed the foundation alone. I thought of our first dates at the Gardner Museum, his proposal in the public garden. There was a time his world revolved around me. When did I fall out of orbit? His phone buzzed endlessly. He'd take calls on the terrace, his voice a low hum. I heard phrases. She's busy with the gala. She's completely unaware. The wire transfer is confirmed. Liam, what is happening? I asked one night. He deflected. Elena, for once, just trust my judgment. The words stung. I already had, with my entire family's capital. He smelled of a perfume I didn't recognize. I saw a file on his screen. Seaport Biolab lease. He snapped the laptop closed before I could read more. No, he said sharply, just work. But his next appointment wasn't for hours. The lights over Boston Harbor seemed cold and unforgiving tonight. Trust me, Elena, Liam whispered later. This will secure everything. He was right. It would secure his other life. Soon I would discover the truth that would demolish mine. Liam, please just talk to me. He looked right through me. I can't right now, he said, glancing at his watch. It was an ordinary Tuesday. There was no crisis. His phone lit up with a name I didn't know. The text said, "Is she suspicious at all?" "Not a clue," Liam typed back instantly. I watched him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice a thread. He glanced over, his eyes empty. He was a man I had never actually known. But the email confirmation for $100,000 in lab equipment was real. My phone vibrated. It was my sister, Isabel. She had been my rock since our parents passed. She'd warned me last week to review our financials. "Let's just have a peaceful night, Elena. Don't spoil it." His tone was ice. "Just trust me." It felt like a threat. I saw the muscle working in his jaw. The endowment transfer was completed 3 months later, nearly $30 million. My father was a planner. I remember signing the documents, giving Liam discretionary control while I was lost in grief, just hedging against volatility, hedging with secret investments. "For God's sake, Elena." He ran a hand through his hair, his voice rising. The baby kicked. He saw it and his tone softened. "Sorry, the pressure is just immense." I just nodded, numb. He grabbed his coat at 8:30 p.m. A swift kiss on my forehead. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, walking out the door. My stomach clenched. "You're not coming home tonight?" I returned to the cold, cavernous brownstone, which now smelled of deceit. I picked up his tablet again. I knew my life would be different by morning. The passcode was our anniversary. I almost hoped it was wrong. My heart hammered in my ears. I opened his email. A press release from a new biotech firm. The CEO thanked her lead investor and mentor. The woman's social media was public. A recent post read, "Breaking ground on our new lab. Couldn't do it without you, Elle." I searched her name and venture capital. Her profile appeared instantly. She was the CEO of a cutting edge Boston startup. Young, brilliant, the late nights, the secret calls, my foundation's money, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. I slid down the cold wall. The drained foundation account finally made sense. It had paid for his other venture, her lab, their equipment, their future. He was stealing from our family's philanthropy to fund his new life. Isabel always said Liam's ambition was a liability, a beautifully wrapped package of debt. For years, she warned me. I dismissed it as cynicism, but I was just naive, seeing only what I wanted to see. I was about to watch my marriage implode on my own office monitor. I was staring at a huge, unauthorized wire transfer, a payment to a biotech firm I'd never heard of. For our new venture, the memo read, Forever yours, L. His initials scrawled on the screen felt like a physical blow. So intimate, so familiar. It was the same way he used to sign notes to me, back when our life together was still real. An hour later, with Isabel and our lawyer in my office, I finally understood. It wasn't just one payment, but a systematic drain. Funds from our foundation's trust were routed to her startup. One transfer was marked Cambridge Property Lease. It included a link to a portfolio for a stunning modern lab on the Charles River, a clone of the one we'd always dreamed of building. He'd approved the final payment that morning at 9:51. For our next chapter, the message said. He had stolen everything. He was building my dream for another woman. Just then I heard Isabel's sharp footsteps approaching, her voice calling out, Elena, are you still in here, Elena? I looked up as she entered. Her face shifted from confusion to alarm as her leather briefcase hit the carpet. You need to call our attorney now, I managed to say, my stomach twisting into a knot. What did you find? Her voice went crisp, the CFO taking over. Nothing we can't handle, just tell me what you're looking at. Our legacy, I whispered, my gaze drifting past her to the scale model of the community health center we were meant to be funding. What happened to it? She said nothing. She simply took the tablet from my hands and led me to a chair, turning me away from the screen that showed our shattered plans. Is something wrong? I asked, my voice barely audible. A problem with the foundation's finances? Perhaps, Isabel said, clicking open a file on my desktop, but these private loans your husband guaranteed? Elena? I could only stare at her, my mind blank. He just used the entire foundation as collateral on a high-risk venture loan that's tripping every single one of my financial alarms. The world seemed to tilt as the floor dropped away beneath me. I gripped the arms of my chair. Isabel's hand was a firm weight on my shoulder. Elena, you need to listen to me. You are not in immediate legal trouble, but we must be very careful. Our family's wealth manager appeared on a secure video call. A woman with sharp eyes gave Isabel a single grim nod. Mr. Vance is on his way. He's a private investigator. An investigator? My voice was thin. Why would I need one? Isabel's gaze was hard, filled with a seriousness I had never seen before. Because, she stated flatly, I believe Liam is preparing to bankrupt our family's foundation. I wanted to laugh it off, to call it some ridiculous misunderstanding we could easily resolve. But the sound died in my throat. A cold, certain part of me knew that the most perfect exteriors often hide the most profound rot. I knew she was right. They had me wait in my own office, which now smelled of betrayal and cold coffee. The investigator, Vance, had a face that looked both kind and utterly exhausted. That was the only thing that kept me from bolting from the building. It was my foundation, my family's name on the door, but it suddenly felt like a cage. A clock on the wall showed 10:02 in the morning. Our final grand presentation was scheduled in less than 30 minutes. Vance was in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the calm demeanor of a man who had navigated Boston's ugliest divorces. He wore a small, simple pin on his lapel. His eyes met mine. Mrs. Hayes. I'm Arthur Vance, he said. Your sister walked me through the loan agreements she uncovered. I need to ask you a few questions, and I will need your complete honesty. I nodded, my throat feeling too tight to speak. First, can you explain why your husband would use your foundation as collateral for a $30 million venture capital loan 4 weeks ago? What? The number was nonsensical. A venture loan? Vance slid a thin folder across the desk. Your sister found the signed agreement. $30 million with your foundation's assets forfeited upon default. Does any of that make sense to you? I shook my head, a wave of nausea washing over me. No, Liam, his firm handles our larger investments, but we never ever discussed anything on this scale. Mrs. Hayes, Vance's voice was calm and steady. With your permission, I need to phone the creditor and verify that this agreement is, in fact, active. Yes, do it, I said in a breathless rush. This must be some kind of clerical error. Liam loves me. Vance was already dialing, the call placed on speaker. A clear voice answered. Atlantic Private Capital, Special Assets. You're speaking with Sarah. This is Ethan Cole, Texas Private Security License number 9812. I'm reviewing a potential breach in a client's smart home network. I need to confirm the service logs for the Thorne residence in Austin, specifically for the HVAC and gas fireplace systems, time-stamped around 2 a.m. this morning. A few keystrokes echoed on the other end of the line. Yes, sir, I'm showing a system override command was pushed to that address. The command originated from an external IP address, routing through a proxy in Eastern Europe. It manually disabled the carbon monoxide detector's failsafe, and the fireplace's auto shut-off. The room seemed to tilt. Can you send me the encrypted command log for that event? Cole asked. This is part of an active threat assessment. It's on its way. Cole disconnected and tapped his tablet. He angled the screen toward me. My home's security network, my personal data, and a digital command that looked like code, yet felt like a death warrant. That command wasn't a glitch, I whispered, my hand shaking. Cole magnified the log file. Are you familiar with this IP string? Look at the user tag, I said, my finger hovering over the screen. He always uses MT Innovates for his private projects. That's him. And the override code? It's our anniversary date. Cole compared the log data to a file my sister Lena had pulled from my husband's laptop. He nodded grimly. This was deliberate. I don't get it, my voice trembled. Why would Marcus try to do this? What for? Cole didn't reply right away, his fingers flying across the tablet screen. Mrs. Thorne, I need your consent to run a complete financial and digital forensics check on your husband. Of course, do anything. Everything. More tapping. Cole's expression grew harder. His tech company's latest funding round fell through 3 weeks ago, he stated quietly. He has over $4 million in leveraged private investments, and his personal accounts were just frozen by the bank. 2 of his early partners are suing him. I couldn't seem to catch my breath. There's more, Cole continued. He liquidated a joint investment account over the past 6 months. The total withdrawal amounts to just over $5 million. That was my inheritance, I whispered. For our baby. He claimed he was reinvesting it in a government-backed fund. Mrs. Thorne, I'm sorry, Cole said, but that money was funneled through a series of crypto wallets and is now gone. I clung to the table, my knuckles white. One more thing, your husband took out a $1 million loan from a high-risk lender. The lender is known only as the architect. We've encountered him. He's a loan shark with ties to industrial espionage. The full amount is due in 3 days. And if Marcus can't pay? Cole's silence was answer enough. I saw the time, 10:32 in the morning. My phone lying on the table buzzed relentlessly. Cole looked at the caller ID. That's your husband, he said. This is the 20th time he's called or texted since I got here. 20 times. Cole angled the phone so I could see the flood of messages. Marcus Thorne. Amelia, where are you? Marcus Thorne. Amelia, call me. Marcus Thorne. Why aren't you answering? Marcus Thorne. You're going to miss the tour of the new maternity wing. Marcus Thorne. Amelia. Marcus Thorne. Please. Marcus Thorne. I love you. Call me so I know you're okay. The messages were a perfect 30-minute act of a worried, devoted husband. He needs me at that hospital tour, I said, the words cutting my throat. He needs you to be at a predictable location at a certain time, Cole corrected softly. The front door's smart lock chimed on Lena's phone. It was the security guard. Mr. Thorne is in the lobby asking to come up. 10:45 in the morning. Cole placed his hand on the table. Mrs. Thorne, he said, his voice quiet and firm, your husband is a desperate man who believes he's $75 million away from a clean slate. He will be at this door in 2 minutes. If you are here, you become a liability. We have to go now. If I'm not here, he'll know something is wrong, I argued. He can't reach you if you're with us, he replied. The clock ticked to 10:46. I saw Marcus's face, heard his heartfelt speeches about our daughter. This birthing center will be our legacy, he'd promised. I thought of my company, my child's future. The line between being cared for and being controlled had vanished. Trust your gut, Mrs. Thorne, Cole urged. I made my decision. I did not stay. 15 minutes later, we were in a secured vehicle. An hour later, a call came in from the Austin Police Department. I could see the truth in his face. Cole's expression had hardened as he took the call. He was outlining our next steps when the notification came through. He met my eyes, a grim finality in his gaze, as he showed me the image from the incident report, a sophisticated, remotely triggered device designed to overload the car's battery system. My hand flew to my stomach as the color drained from my face. Lena, I managed to say into the phone, my voice hollow. It was Marcus. Everything went quiet. On the tablet, the officer's preliminary findings were displayed. I heard my sister's choked, panicked gasp. Amelia, what is it? Lena's voice was laced with a horrible new fear. Oh, Amelia, she said. Just tell me, Ames, what did you find? He has a whole other life. I didn't need to see the proof. The break in my sister's voice was confirmation. The folder was named Our New Beginning. The woman in the photos was Isabel. It contained property titles, private emails, plans for a future. Each word was a poison I couldn't fight. I couldn't fathom the lie, especially the note that called our daughter a temporary obstacle. The search history, I whispered. What was he looking for? Methods to induce premature labor, Lena read, her voice thick with fury, and how to transfer assets to a non-marital trust. My legs gave out. I collapsed into a nearby chair as the phone fell from my grip. I was paralyzed. The smell of gas, the faintness. He tried, I choked out. No, Ethan's voice was firm through the phone speaker. Amelia, listen to me. This wasn't some fluke. The safety valve on your gas fireplace was overridden remotely. He wanted you erased. The fire department would have called it a tragic smart home malfunction, a software bug. If you hadn't stepped onto the balcony for air, I'd be planning your funeral. That was his goal. His words were chilling. He wanted to eliminate you both, Amelia. We need a plan. An hour later, a man stood at my sister's door. He was in his 40s, with a calm presence, dressed in a sport coat that didn't quite conceal his readiness. Lena called me, he said, his voice measured and calm. I'm Ethan Cole. I specialize in private security. She gave me the broad strokes. Show me everything. I led him to the study. He closed the door and the room felt small. Mrs. Thorne, Ethan began, taking a seat opposite me. My proposal is going to be unorthodox. It will require your absolute trust. Are you with me? I could only nod. Your husband increased your life insurance policy to $75 million. A cold knot formed in my stomach. He said it was to secure the baby's future. But if we both die, the beneficiary is a trust controlled by his mother. We agreed my sister's children would be the beneficiaries. Ethan showed me his tablet. This is from his private server. He used a VPN and wiped the history, but he's an amateur. A list of search queries appeared. How to exploit smart home security flaws. Bypassing residential carbon monoxide sensors. Each search was time-stamped. The last one was at 2:03 a.m. This is Marcus, Ethan said, pulling up another file. He got overconfident. He wrote memos to his wealth manager about your prenuptial agreement and the insurance policy's beneficiary clause. He thought he was covering his tracks, but he left a blueprint. Why would he be so careless? Ethan explained. He needed your death to look like an accident. A system failure bypasses certain clauses in your prenup. With you out of the way, his family's trust gets the full $75 million. The insurance company wouldn't fight a claim based on faulty tech. The insurance is void in cases of foul play, and the accident report already points to brake tampering. The world tilted, and I gripped the edge of the table. Olivia, David's voice was low and steady. You must let him think he almost succeeded, that you're too shattered to see the truth. He continued, this is now about attempted murder and massive fraud. We can use his own arrogance against him. You want me to act? I whispered, my breath catching. To pretend I don't know he tried to kill me. Exactly, David said, because Ethan is the only one who knows what he did, and right now he feels untouchable. He played a file from a traffic camera near our home. There was Ethan standing on the corner as I drove to the gallery. The timestamp read 9:51 a.m. I saw him watch my car pass. Then he raised his phone to his ear, and for a split second he smiled, a look of pure cold victory. He thinks it's done, I said, a wave of ice washing through me. My own voice sounded like a stranger's. Yes, David confirmed, and that's our advantage. He leaned forward. Olivia, Ethan must believe you are recovering at a private clinic in Napa with Sarah. We will move you to a secure location and put him under constant surveillance. Men who think they're geniuses always get careless. He'll slip up. He'll contact the other woman. He'll follow up on the insurance. When he does, we'll have him. How long will this take? I asked. 3 days, maybe less. I stared at the still image of my husband's triumphant smile. The man I married 2 years ago, the one who promised to protect me. Till death do us part. He meant it literally, just not for himself. David slid a keycard across the table. There's a complication. Your friends will call. They'll want to see you. You cannot respond. We can't risk him finding out. My partners, my friends, they would think I was abandoning them. I understand, I said, seeing no other path. David stood, opening a slim briefcase. Inside was a clean phone, a hotel key, and a thick bundle of cash. This phone has one number in it, he said. The key is for a private suite at the Pelican Inn. The cash is for incidentals. No cards, no digital trail. For the next 72 hours, Olivia Thorne is resting in the countryside. Now we see what your husband does when he believes he has everything he ever wanted. The suite had a view of the ocean, but I couldn't see it. I only saw Ethan's face. The room was minimalist, cold. A bedroom, a living area. On a small desk, 3 screens displayed a dozen camera feeds from our penthouse in Pacific Heights. The home where my husband was now playing the role of the devoted, worried spouse. David sat with me, holding a cup of tea. He hadn't left since we arrived 2 hours ago. The cameras were activated at 2 p.m. He said quietly, my team installed them this afternoon while Ethan was at his office. The warrant allows for full monitoring. We have eyes and ears on all the main rooms and exits. At 2:34 p.m., Ethan's car appeared on the monitor. I watched him get out, toss his keys on the counter, and walk into the living room, surveying it like a new prize. He sat on the couch and pulled out his phone. For nearly 5 minutes, he was motionless, just staring at the screen. Then a slow smile spread across his face. It was subtle, just a slight curve of his lips, pure self-congratulation. It vanished instantly, but I saw it. Did you see that? I breathed. David nodded, his expression grim. Ethan stood, went to the bar, and poured a large scotch. He drank it in one swift, hard motion. He stood there for a moment, breathing deeply, like a runner who had just finished a grueling race and could finally rest. His mother, Catherine, arrived at 6:48 p.m. I watched her car pull into the driveway. She emerged with a designer tote and rang the bell. Ethan buzzed her in. Catherine threw her arms around him, playing the part of the distraught mother-in-law. I saw him pat her back, his face a perfect mask of sorrow as he glanced past her, down the street. She's in on it, I said, my voice breaking. She knew. I'm sorry, Olivia, David said softly. Some family bonds are toxic. Catherine said something, and Ethan nodded. They moved to the couch. She began unpacking food containers, bringing him comfort because that's what you do when a terrible plan goes off without a hitch. Ethan gave her a real smile then, one of shared victory. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. They talked for 2 hours. I watched Catherine make a sharp gesture, saw Ethan agree, placing a hand on her arm to reassure her. At 8:52 p.m., Catherine hugged him at the door. The moment it closed, Ethan's entire posture changed. He went back to the couch, took out his phone, and dialed a number with a smug look. He is a predator, I realized, a true sociopath. I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair glued to the monitors. At 11:14 p.m., Ethan turned down the lights. At 11:22, the bedroom camera switched to infrared. I watched, hoping for some sign of guilt. He was perfectly still. He fell asleep within minutes, his breathing even, the peaceful rest of a man with no conscience. My sister Sarah arrived with coffee at dawn. I hadn't moved. You have to sleep. I can't. She didn't press. She put the mug beside me. At 9:15 a.m. on March 3rd, Ethan went into his study. The new smart home system he'd installed had synced his laptop to our shared cloud. I saw an alert that a video conference had started. We could hear his side of the conversation. His voice was practically vibrating with energy as he gestured wildly. He paced the room, smiling, before letting out a short, sharp laugh of triumph. He ended the call, looked at his phone, and did a little fist pump. A clear win. Sarah leaned in. What in the world was that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I grabbed my phone and texted our family lawyer. I need his call records. We have to know who was on the other end of that call. I watched Ethan walk back into the living room, still grinning. He's not worried, Sarah whispered. He's euphoric. That night at 10:46 p.m., a credit card alert pinged for a room at the Proper, a boutique hotel downtown. I pictured him meeting some woman I'd never seen. He would greet her at the door, holding her close. They would step inside the room. The lights would come on. He pointed from my tablet to my face. His car's Bluetooth is active. It's still paired with your master account. A small microphone icon glowed on the screen. We can listen, he whispered. Are you sure you want to? I shook my head no, then I nodded yes. Our lawyer, Arthur Vance, was scheduled for a 9 a.m. call. I saw the payroll from Ethan's tech company and then a separate ledger for project bonuses. Those payments are going to Chloe Jansen, my brother confirmed. 26 years old, a lead developer at his firm, lives in the marina, and just bought a new Porsche. She has a clean record. We matched the dates with his travel logs, my brother said. She is his top engineer. Her expense reports show she was in Austin with him 6 times last year. They always stayed at the same luxury resort. He paused. Liv, I am so sorry. My God, she sounded so upset. Ethan, I saw the medical update. I read what the doctors found. I just don't understand. Shh. Hey, it's going to be okay. His voice was soothing, the same one he used after our mother died. Come here. I could hear the rustle of a coat, her quiet sobs muffled against his chest. I'm just so terribly sorry, she cried. No more secret meetings. We can be a real couple now, but the baby, her condition, it's an unfortunate complication. Ethan's tone was cold, as if he were discussing a supply chain issue, not my life, and the life of our unborn child. This just pushes up our timeline. I felt like I couldn't get enough air. My brother stared at the tablet, his hand trembling. It is a practical thing to say. A heavy silence filled the car. Don't act like you are not also a little relieved. There was another longer pause. I am, she admitted in a whisper. I am so sorry, but I am. I am so sick of all the hiding. I know, my love, but it is almost over now. There is one other thing, Chloe said. Her voice was low and shaky. I need to tell you something. What is it? I'm pregnant. We agreed we would tell her together. 8 weeks. My hand flew to my mouth. Are you sure? Chloe asked. Timelines can be confusing. If the baby is due in September, that's months from now. By then, we'll be on the Amalfi Coast. Gone? I told you, my love. We're not staying in San Francisco. Too much baggage here. We'll have a clean slate, just the 3 of us. But how? Ethan's laugh was deep and rich. Olivia's prenuptial agreement includes a $20 million inheritance clause. If she were to pass away, I am the sole beneficiary. Once that money clears, our new life begins. 20 million. Oh, Ethan, I know, it fixes everything for us. I could hear him rustling in the glove compartment. Then the sound of a metal cap twisting off. What are you doing? Chloe asked, pouring a little toast, a celebration. Ethan, I cannot drink. I am pregnant. In that case, I will have one for all three of us. The sound of liquid being poured. To us, Chloe, to our villa, to no more lies. To us, she repeated. I love you too, both of you. A short silence, then his voice softened. Let me feel. Marcus, stop, not here. A soft laugh came from Isabel. Then Marcus's voice, filled with a tenderness that churned my stomach, said, Hello in there, little champion. Daddy is so excited to meet you. I barely made it to the restroom before I was sick. When I finally emerged, my sister gave me a glass of water. I am sorry, she said. I am so, so sorry you had to hear that. I took the glass with trembling hands. 6 weeks, I whispered. She's 6 weeks pregnant. I know. He was setting this up long before I even knew. He was at it again, drafting plans. My brother Liam started a new encrypted file. Julian was definitely waiting for the inheritance money, he confirmed. He's going to use the $15 million to vanish. It's clear intent. But we have to prove he knew about the prenup clause before now. I knew what to look for. 3 days later, our attorney filed an emergency freeze on my trust. 4 days after that, Julian's venture capital accounts were locked. I watched it all from Liam's place in Palo Alto, seeing the angry texts flood Julian's phone at 10:30 a.m. on October 9th. This asset freeze is temporary, Mr. Davies warned us in his office. It's a 60-day hold. Julian will argue for his spousal right to the capital given our situation. He'll probably get a hearing date set for early January. January 1st, I thought. Hey, I need your take on something. His voice was a perfect performance of a concerned husband. I'm thinking we do a charity gala at the club on the 28th. For the children's hospital wing. I just can't. He choked on a fake sob. I can't just stand by. My brother's voice came back through my earpiece. How can I go on without her, Owen? I didn't even say goodbye. My sister Eleanor's face was a portrait of sorrow on the monitor. I remembered Julian, at our apartment, turning his head as a small smirk played on his lips. My cousin Owen tapped the screen. Press release draft, dated October 28th. He's already spinning the narrative. On October 8th, at 2:15 p.m., Julian walked into a crypto exchange and left with $50,000 in Monero. We had the security footage in an hour. It was him, cool as ever, signing the tablet. Owen pulled up the financial tracker on his screen. Our joint tech portfolio, Index Ventures, worth about $800,000. He gets half, so why the untraceable crypto? Owen wondered. He hasn't touched the portfolio, Owen said, scrolling through the data. This was wired from your private wealth account, Eleanor, not your joint funds. I was stunned. That account requires dual voice authorization. He must have recorded your voice, Owen said, maybe from a phone call. Liam nodded. The bank's AI security already flagged it. The primary account holder was reported missing in a national alert on October 5th. Liam recovered a deleted audio file. We can hear him setting it up. My cousin, the tech whiz, looked pale. He's getting sloppy, I whispered. The next day, Julian called his contact in the Caymans. He was in his car, but the connection was perfect. His anger was palpable. I get the protocol, but I am the sole remaining partner. I have to liquidate the holding company. A brief pause. $3 million. Yes, that is the correct total. A longer silence. What do you mean you need a notarized death certificate? The sailing accident was public knowledge. She's gone. We couldn't hear the banker, but Julian's clipped response was clear. What's the timeline on that? A month? I don't have a month. My new partners need that seed money now. He paused, sighing dramatically. I'm sorry, it's just a difficult time. Tell me the process one more time. Another moment of quiet. Then Julian's tone became sharp. Fine, I'll get you the documents, thanks. He hung up and we heard the thud of his fist on the dashboard of his Lucid Air. The investigator made a note. Needs spousal signature to liquidate. The funds are stuck. That night, Julian found Eleanor in the den. I booked our baby moon, he said, his voice like honey. A private villa in the Caymans, leaving October 10th. One way. One way? Eleanor asked, her voice steady. Julian, that's just 2 weeks from now. I know, but it's the perfect time. The longer we wait, the more Q4 pressure builds at the company. I want us gone before the next board meeting. It's just cleaner. But the baby, my 30-week appointment is that Friday. We will fly in the best doctor from Johns Hopkins. Money is no longer a concern, Eleanor. You have to believe me. There was a short silence. Then Eleanor, her voice soft. I believe you, Julian. It just seems very fast. I know, my love. But soon it will be just us on a secluded beach. No more meetings, no more lies. Just our new family. Her brother Liam pulled up a new window. Flight manifests. He had already breached the private jet charter server. 2 seats, San Francisco to Grand Cayman. October the 10th, an 11 p.m. departure. The return flight was not booked. He's planning to run, her lawyer stated. He thinks he is, Liam corrected. He rotated his monitor. The Instagram photo was zoomed in. Julian's face was clear. The timestamp. The $100,000 wire for a property deposit. He's using your money to disappear with her, Liam said quietly. I stared at the man I had loved, the man who promised me forever, the man now cashing out our life to begin another with his pregnant COO, while I was a prisoner in my own home, hiding out in my cousin's spare room. How much more? I asked, my voice cracking. How much longer must I pretend? Liam and Owen shared a look before Owen opened a new folder. We tracked a payment from one of Julian's dark web accounts, he said. $90,000 transferred on October 6th to a group called Aegis Solutions. They're a maritime logistics contractor based in Miami. We made a call to their office. The air in the room went frigid. A logistics firm? The kind you hire to make shipments vanish. Owen's voice was low. Eleanor, Julian wasn't just planning to leave you. He paid professionals to ensure you never made it back. By the 6th day, we knew who my husband hired to stage my death. On the 7th, I saw the proposal detailing their services. Our family lawyer, Mr. Davies, came to the house at 4 p.m. on November 12th, holding a tablet with a grim look on his face. He placed it on the counter, showing a passport photo. Sergei Volkov, 49. Former Spetsnaz, dishonorably discharged in 2011. A list of accusations over the past decade, from arms trafficking to kidnapping. Always walked free. Witnesses had a habit of disappearing. His reputation in Miami is for solving complex offshore problems. I stared at the photo, a bald head, dead eyes, a thin scar through his left eyebrow. He looked every bit the monster I had feared. We had him picked up by federal agents this morning, Mr. Davis said. The $90,000 crypto transfer from your husband was traced to a wallet owned by Volkov. We have the blockchain records. We have their encrypted chats. A contract? My voice was a dry whisper. A series of messages on a private server. It was heavily coded, but our analyst broke it. Your husband specified his needs. Volkov quoted his price. $90,000 as a deposit. $180,000 on completion, funneled to an account in Cyprus. $270,000, the value Julian had placed on my life. Mr. Davis turned the tablet to me. It displayed a video from an interrogation room. Stark walls, a metal table. Volkov sat calmly, not in cuffs. Davis's partner, a sharp woman named Miss Reed, sat across from him. A public defender was beside Volkov, looking indifferent. This was recorded a few hours ago, Mr. Davis said. You are watching his proffer session. Are you prepared? I gave a small nod. I was not prepared at all, but I nodded. For an hour, Volkov gave them nothing. The $90,000 was for charter yacht security analysis. He denied any contact with Julian Thorne. He insisted the messages were faked. Then Miss Reed slid a folder across the table. Your burner phone's cell tower data. On October 2nd at 5 p.m., you received a call from a number we traced to Julian Thorne. The call was 5 minutes long. What was the subject? Volkov glanced at the papers. Nothing. We can cut a deal, Sergey. Miss Reed's voice was even. Conspiracy gets you 25 years. You'll be eligible for parole in 18. Or we can push for the full attempted murder charge and you'll die in prison. Your call. Volkov looked at his lawyer, who gave a slight shrug. Volkov let out a breath. What do you want to know? I was introduced to Julian Thorne at a tech conference in Lisbon last August. Mr. Grant's voice was flat, reading from a file. A private issue, he said, was threatening a massive funding round. He needed a permanent solution, something that would look like a tragic accident on vacation. I told him that kind of service is expensive. He said the money was not an issue. My sister leaned in. So, what was the plan? It centered on their trip to the Caymans on the 12th, a remote coral reef, a perfect place to stage a scuba diving incident with no one around. His alibi? A sudden equipment failure, and she was swept away by the current. He would be the grieving widower, the sole survivor. The corporate insurance claim would appear as a tragic, unavoidable system failure, not a federal crime. The startup, a complete write-off. He would disappear, a tech visionary ruined by bad luck, a cautionary tale. It happens in the volatile world of software. Companies go under. An audit would find nothing amiss. The official story would be a catastrophic data loss. The venture capitalists would lose their shirts. He would secure the 20 million. I held my phone tightly. My sister Olivia's voice was sharp. This is way beyond simple market manipulation. The detective nodded. Correct. Liam had sounded so arrogant on the encrypted message. On October 17th, just after 1 a.m., he sent a text. It read, Ava, the code is wiped. It's done. The company is finished. Our next chapter begins now. He ended it with a rocket ship emoji. A rocket ship. Detective Miller displayed his phone, showing the screenshot. Liam's message, perfectly preserved. The company is finished. Our next chapter begins now, and that rocket ship, so smug, so absolute. I had seen him use it dozens of times, after securing a new round of funding, after a profile in a tech journal. I had never seen it used like this, as if my whole life was just a launchpad he was leaving behind. What was his reason for the hidden crypto wallets? Detective Miller asked. He said it was a diversification strategy to secure our child's future. Then he locked me out of all our accounts. Miller looked at me, his expression serious. Chloe, I need you to be very clear. Are you stating that Liam Vance committed corporate fraud, planned an escape to Singapore with Ava, moved your joint assets into untraceable crypto wallets, and then texted her to confirm the plan was in motion after his company imploded? That is precisely what happened. And you are willing to testify? Chloe glanced at her lawyer, who gave a firm, measured nod. Yes, Chloe stated clearly. I will give a full deposition. Detective Miller set his phone down, his eyes on me. Mrs. Vance, we are investigating conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. Your husband is facing significant charges, but we require your cooperation. He needs to think you are still unaware. Olivia stood and pulled a key fob from her purse. My spare fob to our condo was on her keychain, the one with a little silver circuit board charm he gave me when he got his first seed funding. Tomorrow evening, Miller said, 9 p.m., you will enter the tech gala alone. 2 of my detectives, 6 agents, and you. Liam is a keynote speaker at the event. He will be there. Ava will be attending with him. We plan to take them both into custody. Ava, I whispered. She is his co-conspirator, Miller stated. She knew he was hiding the funds, knew the server failure was deliberate, knew about the offshore crypto. She is essential to proving the conspiracy. I stared at the key fob in Olivia's hand, the key to the home I fled last month, the home I designed with a man who was planning to abandon me and our unborn daughter. Is this really the only way? Chloe asked. I was not certain. I hated this, walking into our home like a common thief. But I clutched the tiny, untraceable recording device he handed me. Yes. Before I described seeing my husband Liam, the man who intended to erase me, smiling like he had already won, you have to hear this. Please confirm you understand, because this is difficult. This story is true and the pain is immense. Take a moment if you need it, okay? Here we go. The condo felt suspended in time. The minimalist German furniture I picked out now seemed cold and alien. The scent of pine from the rooftop garden we planted, the view of Puget Sound, where he asked me to marry him. Everything was the same, but the man who lived here was a ghost. Or that was the narrative his investors were meant to swallow. Detective Miller met me on the street at 8:31 p.m. He was a solid, grounding presence beside me. My sister Olivia was on my other side. Behind us, four agents in cocktail attire split up, two heading for the service elevator, two blending into the gala's buzzing crowd. Are you prepared? Miller asked. I was not. I would never be, but I gave a sharp nod. Miller spoke to the concierge. We are guests of Mr. Vance. A few silent taps on a tablet. This way, please. We proceeded without speaking. We passed a DJ playing a low, atmospheric track. Mr. Vance is in the private lounge. He gestured toward a sleek, matte black door. Nothing more was said. Miller extended his hand. I gave him the key fob, the one with the small silver charm, the key to this whole operation. He slipped it into his pocket as we continued. We entered. The lounge smelled of expensive whiskey and Ava's perfume. Santal 33, deep and overpowering. So different from the light citrus scent I always wore. The room was dark, the lights of Seattle glittered past the panoramic windows, and there, by a large holographic display, were Liam and Ava, sharing a laugh with a developer, their faces lit by the glow of a crypto wallet interface. They were completely unaware of us. Liam was pointing, tapping the display. I could just hear the words from the entrance. Singapore. A private jet charter. Ava rested her head on his shoulder. Her hand was placed on her own stomach, the unmistakable curve of her 5-month pregnancy visible under her silk dress. I stepped into the doorway into the soft light, directly in his line of sight. Liam, I said, just his name, my voice even, but it shattered their quiet celebration. His head snapped up. His whiskey glass fell, spilling amber liquid across the concrete floor. For a beat, he just stared, his mind failing to compute. His face turned a ghostly white, a terrible ashen color. His mouth fell open. He was frozen. Then Ava noticed me. Her eyes widened. A tiny choked gasp escaped as she shoved her chair back so hard it tipped over as she scrambled to her feet. Liam rose, using the table to steady himself. No, he whispered. No, you're supposed to be in Portland for your parents' anniversary. I took another step into the lounge, feeling Olivia's reassuring hand on my back. I know, I said, my voice calm and level, as if correcting a minor detail. That was the cover, right? You were supposed to be grieving. His voice was a choked rasp. The system failure report? I saw the alert. I was not grieving, Liam. I was with the Securities and Exchange Commission, outlining the $20 million corporate policy you activated right before you intentionally wiped the servers. He just shook his head, a wild, useless motion as if he could wish me away. You cannot know that. I had to. Know what? That you paid the system administrator to fake the maintenance records? That once the federal probe began, you messaged her that your new life was ready? That you had a drink to celebrate, Liam? That you raised a glass with her? I looked at Ava, who was trapped by the window, looking at me like I was a ghost. That you planned your escape with our entire life savings while my sister was picking out invitations for our baby shower. Liam lunged toward me. Miller was quicker, blocking his path. Do not move, Miller ordered. His voice was low, decisive. Liam's frantic eyes darted past Miller to me. You do not understand. I did this for us. The market was about to crash. I could not lose everything. I cut him off. You did this for $20 million, and you ruined the lives of your employees to do it. Every time I spoke, Liam searched for an out. Not toward me, but to a private exit, any escape route. He took 3 steps before 2 plainclothed agents blocked the doorway. Their stance was casual, but their purpose was clear. Let me see your hands. Liam froze, then turned, looking at me one last time, cornered and enraged. Then Detective Miller was behind him, securing his arms, the sharp sound of handcuffs clicking in the now total silence. Liam Vance, Miller said, you are under arrest for wire fraud and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you are unable to afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand the rights I have just read to you? Liam was silent, his gaze fixed on mine. Mr. Vance? Miller repeated. Do you understand? Yes. The word was almost inaudible. They led him toward the door, passing so close I could smell the cologne I bought him for our last anniversary. He stopped, trying to look back at me. Chloe, please. You have to believe me. I never wanted. You wanted an exit, I said. You saw a risk and you called it a strategy. You reveled in your scheme's imagined success. Don't act innocent, Ethan. I knew what you planned. Officers escorted him from the study towards a service elevator. Amelia stood frozen by the bay window, her body racked with silent sobs. A detective gently addressed her. Ma'am, we need a formal statement downtown. I never suspected, Amelia whispered. The new investment was for his startup, I swear. We can discuss that at the precinct, the detective said, her voice soft but firm. They found her shawl and guided her out a side door. She never looked at me. The shame was too great, I imagine. I stood alone in our mansion, our life. The terrace where he proposed, the couch where I told him I was pregnant, the window where we'd watch fog blanket the Golden Gate. My sister, Chloe, came to my side. Are you okay? I couldn't speak. I had no words left. In the window's reflection, I saw them place Ethan in a black car. He was staring right at our window, watching me, as if trying to calculate how his perfect plan had shattered. I met his gaze, refusing to look away first. The car pulled into the street, its lights off. He's heading to headquarters, Detective Harding said beside me. I just nodded, feeling only a profound weariness after a week spent dismantling his web of lies. Harding said Ethan would demand a lawyer before saying a word. It was irrelevant. They had the encrypted emails, the falsified server logs, the crypto wallet keys. The next morning, in a sterile room, Ethan spoke 3 words that changed the game. I'll take a deal. I watched it all from behind two-way glass. Ethan sat under a harsh fluorescent light, his hands cuffed. He looked smaller. It was October the 6th. Shortly after 10 a.m., sleep had been impossible. Detective Harding was beside me with a cup of bad coffee. Across from Ethan sat Assistant DA Ramirez. Next to her was his lawyer, a man named Sterling, whose suit was worth more than my car. My client offers a full confession, Sterling announced, in exchange for a lesser charge. Wire fraud, perhaps 5 years. Edia Ramirez, visible on our monitor, leaned into her mic. Conspiracy to commit murder, multiple counts of grand theft. No deal. His cooperation will be noted at sentencing. Sterling whispered furiously into Ethan's ear. Ethan's shoulders slumped. He gave a tired, defeated nod. He will cooperate unconditionally, Sterling said. Adia Ramirez slid a binder of transaction histories across the table. Explain your company's insolvency, she ordered. Start with last winter. Ethan just stared at the papers. His voice was barely audible when he began. Last January, my startup was failing. Be specific, I lost nearly $5 million on a failed AI platform. I had used Amelia's trust fund as leverage. Her grandfather left it to her 5 years ago. Over 12 million. She let me manage it. I thought I could make it grow. I bet everything on a high-risk venture. It collapsed. ADA Ramirez made a note, and I owed $1 million to a private lender, a man named Russo. He made it clear that if I defaulted, he would... Ethan's voice faltered. His jaw clenched. He would come after my family. So you decided your pregnant wife was the solution. Ethan winced. I didn't think of it like that. I just figured if there was an accident, the insurance money would clear my debts and let me start over. I wasn't thinking clearly. When did you buy the policy? In late May, through a discreet online wealth management firm. I searched things like high-risk spouse insurance payouts. Now, how fast is the turnaround? I secured a $15 million policy from a specialty group. I submitted the forms, forged Amelia's e-signature, and filed it. The policy was active by July 1st, and you finalized your plan then. Ethan gave a small nod. I considered a few scenarios. A car crash on Highway 1 was too unpredictable. A staged robbery felt too violent. A fall from the balcony of our Carmel Beach house seemed cleaner. Our Pacific Heights home has too much security. So the beach house was the best option. It was isolated, quiet, and could easily look like a horrible accident. When did Maya enter the picture? In early July. I knew her from the firm. We began seeing each other secretly. She was driven. We talked about a new life, getting away. I transferred the first payment to her on August 10th. What was her job? Maya was supposed to meet us at the house on September 15th. Her task was to disable the security cameras and weaken the balcony's main support bolt. We would be there for a final romantic weekend. I'd stage a slip near the damaged railing while we were watching the sunset. It would look like a terrible tragedy, and you were both okay with this. Ethan's face went blank. I had no other choice. When did you propose this weekend? Around the end of August. I told Amelia it was a special baby moon, a last getaway before the baby arrived. She was so excited. She trusted me completely. His voice cracked. I moved the last of her trust fund that same day. I converted it to an untraceable cryptocurrency. I knew I'd need clean money afterward. September 9th. Tell me about that afternoon. Ethan shut his eyes tightly. I was packing our bags when I emailed Maya to confirm the details. In our bedroom, I watched Amelia choose her outfits. I thought, this is the last time she'll ever be this happy. Then I went to my study. I received a confirmation from Maya around 7:30 that night. She asked if we were on schedule. I was replying when I looked up and saw my sister-in-law in the doorway, holding printouts of my encrypted emails. The entire plan was exposed. What was your state of mind? Ethan looked up, his gaze meeting Detective Harding's through the glass. Frustration. The word was chilling. Frustration, Detective Shaw repeated. Yes, I called Deva right away. I said the project was dead. My wife found the emails and torched my only way out. I was trapped. She destroyed everything. I buried my face in my hands. Sergeant Chen rested a hand on my arm. Why frustration? Shaw asked. Your wife and baby were safe. Ethan was silent. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. Because she made me the villain. I could have handled it as a tragic illness, not my own doing. But you hired a doctor to falsify her diagnosis. I know. You'd already moved her inheritance into a new trust. I am aware. So, Mr. Hayes, Shaw's voice went cold. Did you feel guilt when you were caught, knowing your wife and child were unharmed? Ethan stared at the table, at the proof of his downfall. I felt exposed, he whispered. Is that not the same as evil? Shaw closed the file. No. On November 6th, 2025, the Suffolk County DA charged Ethan Hayes with conspiracy and fraud. Bail was denied. His trial was set for spring. I stood in the viewing room after they led him out, staring at the chair my husband had used to confess. Isabel, are you okay? Chen asked gently. I had no response. The man I loved, the father of my son, had just explained his plan to have me declared insane. He had his lover helping him. He felt rage that his plan was ruined because it exposed him as a monster. Amid the sickness, a new feeling emerged. Vindication. I was still here. He had lost. In 90 days, I would face him in court and show the world the man he really was. I had 3 months to become the woman who would bring him down. 3 months after I fled our Beacon Hill home, I walked into courtroom 12C and saw my husband in a cheap suit. He looked thin. I had lost my husband, my future, and my own sense of judgment. It was July 10th, 2025, a Thursday. The conference room smelled of old coffee. Our arbiter, a woman named Miss Davies, had a practiced calm. The jury box was gone. My sister Chloe sat beside me, her presence a silent comfort. Ethan sat like a statue next to his lawyer, a man whose tailored suit seemed to sharpen his features. He refused to look at me, a tactic he'd used since I found the clinic transfers. At 9 a.m., the arbiter began. The arbitration for Isabel Hayes and Ethan Hayes is in session. Let's begin with statements. My lawyer, Miss Albright, stood. At 42, she was one of the city's best. She addressed the arbiter. This case is about a profound betrayal. Masked as concern, she said. Ethan Hayes discussed baby names with his pregnant wife, all while his associate was building a business on stolen funds. When his wife uncovered his scheme, securing her future and her child's, Ethan Hayes wasn't relieved. He was furious. We have the emails documenting his anger. She paused. You will see the $2 million seed fund for her design firm. You will see the false medical reports. You will see texts between Ethan and his lover on the day he said he was at a site visit. And you'll read his own words in a note saying, "This was my perfect exit strategy." Miss Albright faced Ethan for a moment before speaking. The defense will claim Ethan Hayes is not a monster. They're correct. He wanted a quiet institutionalization to do his dirty work. When his wife uncovered his plot, his first reaction was denial. This was a calculated plan. It involved gaslighting, asset diversion, and a conspiracy to steal from his pregnant wife. She sat. Ethan Hayes' lawyer, Mr. Cole, stood. His voice was placating. This is about a husband's failings, not a criminal plot to defraud anyone. He argued Ethan never endangered Isabel. Finding his affair was an error, not a crime he planned. A desperate fantasy is not a criminal enterprise. The plaintiff must show that Ethan Hayes took concrete steps. The proof will show he didn't. He made reckless plans that never materialized. He confided in another woman but gave her no marital assets. When his wife's sister found the doctor's emails, my client was as stunned as she was. He gestured to Ethan. You'll hear about his stress, his affair, his ambition. You'll hear of an architect who felt cornered. But you won't see proof of action because he was caught. Cole sat. The room was tense. On April 5th, the plaintiff called Chloe to the stand. Ethan was 40, an architect with a pristine reputation earned in Boston's competitive market. He adjusted his cufflink. I found an email to a discredited psychiatrist on his tablet, Isabel said, her voice shaking. It was from October 10th, 2025. The subject was Project Nightingale. She continued, it laid out the whole strategy. He would use my inheritance to fund a new firm while documenting a narrative of my mental instability. He wanted to gain power of attorney over my family's trust. Isabel spoke of a text she found from September 15th. Ethan wrote, it's working. She is becoming an obstacle. The new firm is at risk if she's involved. He was proud of his plan. On April 6th, Isabel's sister Chloe, a psychiatrist, presented her evidence. She displayed Exhibit A, the fraudulent evaluation of Isabel diagnosing prenatal psychosis. Exhibit B showed wire transfers to a shell company owned by the doctor. Exhibit C was a thread of texts from October 20th, Ethan and Ava discussing Isabel's episodes. Then Chloe played a deleted voicemail. Ethan's voice was clear. Ava is the future. She protects the legacy. We are finally free. The room felt suffocating. My lawyer asked Eleanor in his plans, did Marcus ever mention your welfare? I just shook my head. No, she said he called me the underperforming asset. On March 6th, in that same office, my lawyer had told me, Eleanor, it's time. I rose and walked to the table. My brother gave my arm a squeeze. I sat, steeling myself for what was to come. The silence in the room was crushing. I saw Marcus, his eyes fixed on a picture of the Boston skyline. I had been waiting 8 months for this, but as I opened my mouth, my rehearsed speech vanished. Miss Chen offered a recess. I refused. I had waited this long. I wouldn't stop. Miss Chen began, her voice firm. Mr. Thorne, detail your financial relationship with your wife. But I cut in. I am 34, I stated, my voice finding its power. I am an architect. I have been his wife for 9 years. We married on October 3rd, 2017, in a small church on Beacon Hill. Do you have children? His attorney, Mr. Davies, inquired. No, my voice trembled. We tried. We lost 2 in 2019 and 2022. This baby was our last hope. Miss Chen let the silence hang. Davies seemed uneasy. Tell us about your inheritance. My father died from an aneurysm on May 10th, 2023. He was on a flight to London. There was no time to help him. I took a shaky breath. As his only child, I received his entire estate, which was deposited into our joint accounts in June of 2023. And who managed this new capital? Marcus did. He was the brilliant CEO of Thorn Capital. He handled all our finances. I trusted him completely. Miss Chen paused. Eleanor, were you aware Marcus established several shell corporations in the Caymans in August 2023 using your funds? The room grew cold. I stared at Marcus. His face was unreadable. No, I answered. I only found out a month ago from Miss Chen's forensic accountant. Miss Chen slid a folder across the polished table. I am submitting Exhibit G, incorporation documents from a firm in Grand Cayman, dated August 10th, 2023. Objection, Davies said. This is a private marital finance issue. It shows a clear pattern of financial deception and intent, Miss Chen retorted. The arbitrator allowed it. The papers were filed. Miss Chen gave me a copy. My hands were steady. Did Marcus discuss reallocating your father's portfolio? No. He said he was securing our assets for our son. He promised our baby would have everything. Was that his plan? No. He began funneling my inheritance offshore by October of 2023. I heard someone behind me gasp. Miss Chen continued. Eleanor, did his demeanor change in 2023? Yes. He began taking quiet calls behind his closed office door. He got a new tablet he carried everywhere. He grew cold. He started sleeping in the den in November, saying his work was too disruptive. Did you question him? Twice. Around Thanksgiving, and again after New Year's. Both times he answered, I handle the capital, Eleanor. You handle the crib. I decided to believe him. Miss Chen's tone was soft. And why did you accept that? I looked directly at his lawyer. Because after my dad passed, Marcus was all I had. Because I had lost my father, I'd lost 2 children, and I could not face my marriage ending as well. My voice broke. Miss Chen offered me a glass of water. Eleanor, she said, if Marcus claimed he needed to shift your finances to save his company, would you have permitted it? Of course, without hesitation. It was for our future. I would have agreed to anything if he had just been honest with me. I looked at Marcus. He was studying the tabletop. But he wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for my inheritance. Miss Chen nodded curtly. I have no further questions at this time. Marcus's lawyer, a shark named Davies, got to his feet. He was smooth, almost gentle. Mrs. Thorne, thank you for your candor, he began. With all due respect, I need to ask some questions for the record. I understand. You previously claimed to trust your husband's financial judgment? I did. And now you say he betrayed that trust? I'm certain of it. He meant to leave me destitute and take my son. He used our joint funds to buy his lover a condo. Objection, Mr. Davies interjected. That's pure conjecture. Sustained, the arbitrator agreed. Eleanor, please keep to what you know. Davies pressed on. Mrs. Thorne, is it not a fact that you and Marcus discussed separating in May of 2023? My shoulders went rigid. I proposed couples therapy. Marcus said no. And didn't he state, a divorce would be my ruin? Yes, he said that. And how did you interpret that remark? I met his gaze. At the time, I believed he meant emotionally, that our marriage was too important to lose. Now I realize he meant his career. A public split would trigger a review of our family trust. Mr. Davies was unfazed. But you agree the marriage was in trouble? Yes. You agree Marcus was under extreme professional stress? Yes. And you agree that ending the marriage was a possibility? I suggested we fix it. He was the one outlining a strategy to ruin me. Objection, Davies snapped. Overruled, the arbitrator said. Mrs. Thorne is allowed to share her perception. Mr. Davies took his seat. Miss Chen rose for a final point. Eleanor, we have one last item. We recovered a memo from Marcus's personal drive. I'm displaying it now. The image filled the screen, the text casting a pall over the room. To the Thorne family office draft. Dated October 10th, 2023. Subject: asset restructuring. Isabel is pregnant. She will provide a suitable heir. By the time my son is born, Eleanor's credibility will be shattered, her access to capital frozen. She will be painted as an unfit mother. The Thorne legacy is secure. This non performing asset has been divested. She will never grasp the true cost. A suffocating quiet fell. Behind me, a woman gasped. I peeked back and saw Marcus's mother, my mother in law, hand pressed to her lips, her face ashen. Miss Chen addressed the arbitrator. This memo was found on a drive Mr. Thorne had professionally wiped. He drafted it for his own family's financial managers. He never sent it, but he refined it. She faced me again. Eleanor, did you know your husband was mounting a campaign to systematically dismantle your life? No, I breathed. Thank you. That ends our opening remarks. The other side was scheduled to start on February 12th. Our next meeting was set for February 15th. I couldn't rest. I pictured Isabel with my baby boy. Then I'd wake up remembering this all started because I saw a calendar alert for a maternity ward tour at a hospital I'd never been to. The arbitration began again at 9 a.m. on February 15th. Miss Chen stood calm and prepared. Marcus Thorne had a strategy she began: to discredit his wife, seize her family's wealth, and claim their unborn son. When he found a younger woman at his investment firm, he didn't respect his vows. He set up shell corporations. He saw his wife's pregnancy not as a joy, but as a deadline for his hostile takeover. He called her a legacy asset and an underperforming investment. That is not a man in turmoil. That is a predator liquidating his own family. The opposition will claim Marcus never physically harmed his wife. That is accurate. He hired lawyers and consultants for that. They will say his memos were just angry thoughts. That is not true. He acted on them, shifting millions from their joint accounts into untraceable funds. That is fraud. It is conspiracy and it is immense emotional abuse. After finishing her statement, the prosecutor concluded. Marcus's older brother, Liam, took the stand, his voice low. My brother, Marcus, is a fool, he stated. He betrayed his marriage. He was reckless with the fortune his wife's family entrusted to him. But he is not evil. He never meant to destroy Eleanor. He never initiated a competency hearing or sought power of attorney. A hateful memo is not a crime. The prosecution has presented angry words, but not one real action taken to separate Eleanor from her child, as no such action was taken. The affair was a grave mistake. The financial moves were unorthodox, but they were not illegal. Marcus's defense was thin. The transfers were an aggressive tax strategy, he claimed. Not embezzlement. Was it a desperate move? Yes. Was it proof he intended to commit a crime? Also yes. You just need to create a shadow of doubt, my lawyer said. The jury was out for 12 days. I stayed in a suite at a Boston hotel. My friend Chloe brought me coffee every morning. Detective Harding from the fraud unit texted me each night. The wheels of justice turned slowly. On November 5th, at 9:40 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from the DA's office. Verdict is in. Be at the courthouse by 10:30. I was there by 10:15. The room was packed. Journalists, Marcus's parents, Chloe and Detective Harding were present. Marcus sat at the table in a wrinkled suit. He wouldn't look at me. At 10:47, Judge Alistair came in. We all stood. He sat. We sat. Has the jury come to a decision? The foreman, a man named Mr. Cole, rose with a paper. We have, Your Honor. On count 1, conspiracy to commit fraud. What is your finding? Mr. Cole stared at Ethan. We find the defendant, Ethan Hayes, guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. I felt Chloe's hand squeeze mine. I couldn't breathe. On count 2, grand larceny. Your finding? Guilty. On count 3, conspiracy to commit unlawful confinement. Guilty. On count 4, wire fraud. Guilty. Ethan's posture collapsed. His lawyer whispered to him. He didn't respond. The judge dismissed the jury and set sentencing for December 3rd. I escaped the courthouse into a sea of microphones. Reporters yelled my name. I said nothing. Detective Shaw nodded at me. Chloe was crying softly. I felt nothing. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was emptier. Ethan was in an orange jumpsuit. He looked broken, his hands trembled. The judge invited victim statements. I stood, I approached the podium. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, my name is Isabel Hayes. I am 32 years old. I'm an art historian. I am expecting my son in 3 months. I have a sister who calls me every day. I have a detective who believed me when I showed him a single email. I took a steadying breath. My voice did not waver. Ethan didn't want to leave me. He wanted to erase me. He wanted my family's trust, our home, my sanity, all of it gone, so he and his new partner could have a fresh start. His scheme wasn't just against me. It was against a mother and his own unborn child. An older woman in the gallery began to weep. His mother. She looked at me, her face a mask of shame, then she looked away. Every day that I am free and every day my son is safe is a victory against his failed plan. I will not be a casualty for Ethan. Not me and not my son. I returned to my seat. The judge took off his glasses. He stared at Ethan. Mr. Hayes, he said, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen evil born of greed. But I've never seen a man plot to steal his pregnant wife's mind with the cold precision of an engineer. You have the rest of your life to think about that. He put his glasses on. For count 1, conspiracy, I sentence you to 25 years. For count 2, fraud, 10 years, served consecutively. For counts 3 and 4, 5 years, served concurrently. Your total sentence is 35 years in the Massachusetts Department of Correction. Julian wouldn't be eligible for professional reinstatement for over a decade. A paralegal showed him out of the mediation room. His eyes never met mine. Days later, his protégée at the firm, Katrina Hayes, accepted a settlement. She conceded to professional misconduct, receiving a 2-year suspension of her license and a hefty fine. The court ordered her to repay $75,000. Her daughter, born that January, was now living with her sister. From my new Pacific Heights condo, I watched the press release online. Katrina cried, claiming she believed Julian's designs were for a speculative side project. The board didn't buy it, neither did I. I walked out of the arbitration center on October 10th, 2024. Just after noon, the sun was blinding. Journalists shouted things I couldn't process. My lawyer Maya gave a small nod from the steps. My brother held my arm, but it wasn't a victory, it was the aftermath of a demolition. For weeks, I stayed inside my new apartment. I had fled the Marin County home Julian and I had built together. I couldn't sleep in the bedroom where he dreamt next to me while orchestrating my ruin. I found a small place in the city with a view of the bay and no memories. Maya brought me groceries. My brother Leo messaged me daily. You good? I wasn't. I'd always reply yes. On October 5th, Maya drove me to my first therapist. Dr. Anya Sharma's office was on a quiet street in Sausalito, above a bookstore. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, her expression calm. She didn't ask me to recount the discovery, she asked what I needed to heal. I need the nightmares to stop, I told her. She nodded slowly. That's a place we can begin. The dream was identical every night. I'm in our home in Marin. A single, unfamiliar silver rattle lies on the floor of the empty nursery we designed. I'm frozen, I can't make a sound. The room smells of fresh paint and betrayal. Julian is standing in the doorway watching me, his face a mask. I always wake up with my heart pounding. Dr. Sharma called it a trauma response, an expected reaction to such a deep wound. She said we had to confront the source of the fear to weaken its hold. She taught me breathing exercises. She gave me grounding tools. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch. It was a flimsy defense, but the fear of being alone was overwhelming. In January, I tried to attend my gallery's annual benefit. I put on a gown and called a car, but halfway across the bridge, my throat closed up. My hands began to shake. I told the driver to take me home. I went back to my quiet apartment and slid the bolt across the door 3 times. Dr. Sharma assured me that was normal. You found a limit and that is okay. Healing is not a linear path. On January 15th, something changed. I'd been seeing her twice a week for months. We had discussed Julian, the mediation, Katrina, and the damning gift registry receipts, but I hadn't voiced my own sense of guilt. I can't shake the feeling, I said, that if I hadn't been so naive, I would have known sooner. Dr. Sharma met my gaze. And why is that your responsibility? Because the evidence was right there. The new secret project codes, the long nights at the office. If I had just confronted him, maybe it wouldn't have gone this far. Tears began to stream down my face, a silent, heavy sorrow. Dr. Sharma passed me a tissue. Elena, she said gently, his actions are not your burden to carry. You are responsible for yourself and your baby, and you did everything necessary to protect both of you. That isn't naivete. That is survival. The tears flowed faster, a dam finally breaking. In February, I joined a support group. Survivors of infidelity met on Thursdays in a small library room. The group was intimate, maybe 10 of us. The moderator, a therapist named David, started every session the same way. This is a safe place to share your story. For the first few meetings, I only listened. I heard from Claire, 50, whose husband had a secret crypto fortune and a second apartment across the bay. I heard from Robert, 40, whose wife had systematically emptied their joint accounts to fund a new life in another country. He was served divorce papers at work, completely blindsided. The transactions were disguised as payments to shell corporations. At the fourth meeting, David invited new members to speak. I took a slow breath. My name is Elena, I said. My husband used our shared future to build a life with someone else. And when I found out, he tried to erase me from the picture. The room was quiet. Then Claire reached over and took my hand. You are not alone in this, she said. That's what you need to remember. I started writing that February. At first, just notes, fragments, the coldness in Julian's expression, the exact words from Maya's first call. Elena, are you somewhere private, where we can discuss a gift registry? By March, I had 80 pages. By April, 200. I called it Blueprint for a Betrayal. Dr. Sharma said the writing was a way of reclaiming my own narrative. He does not get to design your future. On May 2nd, I sent the draft to an editor in New York, a woman named Sarah Vance. She replied in 4 days. Elena, I could not stop reading. This is one of the most powerful stories I've encountered in a long time. Let me see what's possible. A month later, a major publisher sent an offer, a 2-book deal. My story and a follow-up about navigating emotional and financial betrayal. The advance was $250,000. I called Maya. I called Leo. Leo was livid. Leo and I had dinner every week. He had sold his celebrated Napa restaurant that fall. He said he couldn't bear the idea of Julian bringing his associates there. It's almost impressive, he said, nursing a beer. We were at a small tavern in his new neighborhood. If Julian had been more careful, if you hadn't seen that boutique charge on the statement, you'd be setting up a crib right now. But I'm not, I replied. He smiled, relieved that his suspicions from the past year were finally confirmed. We clinked our glasses. Maya was my anchor. She checked in every morning. Her husband, Ben, brought me food from Leo's new place when I couldn't eat. He would just sit with me on the sofa while I watched old films, in total silence. He never told me to get over it. He just stayed. On my birthday, he arrived with a small cake and a bottle of sparkling cider. You can't have this, I joked. A little celebration is in order, he said, and there is so much to celebrate. We celebrated my new home. We celebrated our friendship. We celebrated that I had made it through. Then the message from Julian's lawyer appeared. Subject, proposal, regarding marital property, November 4th, 2025. Date, November 3rd, 2024. Dear Miss Rossi, we are drafting a settlement that honors the terms of your prenuptial agreement concerning the $6 million Telegraph Hill penthouse. We are certain you will see this offer is exceptionally generous. We only require your signature. Regards, Richard Crane. The text blurred. Ben came and looked over my shoulder. What's wrong, Elle? He wants me to sign everything away, I whispered. The penthouse, on what would have been our anniversary. I hadn't been to that neighborhood since I had left him. I couldn't bear to think about it. We had picked out colors for the nursery there. Ben was driving, my best friend Maya beside him, and I was in the back. The glass tower looked exactly the same as it had a year ago. Floor 52, the entire level, the same cold lobby, the same arrogant sculpture. I stayed in the car, watching the entrance, my stomach in knots. I don't know if I can go in, I said. Maya turned around in her seat. She was in her professional suit, the fierce protector she was, not just my old friend. Her eyes were like steel. Yes, you can, she said. That man needs to see you. He has to know his money can't make you disappear. You are the one asset he can't write off. Leo's hand was a firm anchor on my arm. You've got this, Elena. I took a single shaky breath. I walked past the twisted metal artwork and the framed magazine feature of him in asterisk, architectural, digest, asterisk. I remembered the night I found the duplicate building plans, a second life hidden in project folders. The conference room felt suffocating. A long glass table offered a stunning panorama of the San Francisco Bay. I saw the papers detailing Julian Vance's 91% stake in the firm he'd just taken public. I saw the deed to the penthouse, owned by a holding company. A single white orchid on the table felt like an insult. One click on a file labeled KH Residence had shattered my world. 4 people were on his side of the table, his 2 lawyers, an associate, and a new executive assistant. Richard Crane, his main counsel, rose to his feet. I recognized him from society photos. His suit was immaculate, his watch worth more than my SUV. We appreciate you joining us today, he began. His tone was smooth, but his eyes were tense. Last year, my client suffered a severe personal and professional lapse. $400,000 of marital funds were improperly diverted to an external residential project. We are here to offer a swift and equitable resolution. He saw the empty chair beside Liam. Liam's former mentor, an architectural genius, who once called Liam his protege, was now his fiercest rival in Chicago. That kind of loyalty was no longer for sale. The mediator's voice steadied as he went on. At 10:30, a forensic accountant began her presentation. She was a stern woman in her late 50s who adjusted her glasses. Let me be direct about what was not disclosed. We apologize for the oversight. Our audit confirms a calculated diversion of marital assets that started on April 10th, 2023. It was an appalling breach of fiduciary and personal trust. The wire transfers showed his deliberate deception. While new bank accounts can be closed, this kind of betrayal lasts forever. I am truly sorry, she concluded. Liam's attorneys shifted in their seats. She detailed the expenses, revealing shadow companies and extravagant gifts I had no knowledge of. The scheme was flawless. At 9:17 a.m., a year to the day I found the blueprints, my lawyer said my name. We reject their offer, he announced. Stella Vance was designing a future with him. His choices and her finding them are why we're here. He systematically undermined her security. He committed fraud against his own wife to finance another life. Olivia, do you wish to say anything? I rose from the head of the conference table. My hands were trembling. I looked at the man across from me, a complete stranger. My name is Olivia Cole. A year ago, I was choosing nursery colors. I was designing a life for our child. I was making our house a home, but a woman named Stella and my husband had different plans, and an accidental file sync revealed everything. My world imploded. I took a steadying breath, my eyes locked on Liam. His expression was pure stone. I am here because the truth was exposed. $1.5 million from our joint investments was not. When he learned I knew, there was no remorse. He treated it like a hostile takeover. He thought money would buy my silence. He used our unborn child as leverage. I regret that I am not so easily managed. I regret my signature is on the deed to our home. I regret he treated our vows like a business loan. But I will design a life that is mine. The city will know my name, not his. I sat down. The room was deathly silent. Then my sister Sophie started to clap. Then my attorney stood with her. In a moment, my entire team was on its feet. The tears I'd held back began to fall. Afterwards, a woman approached me, her face tired but composed. My son was a junior architect at Liam's firm. Thank you for your courage. Another woman took my arm. My daughter was his lead designer there. Thank you. She showed me a picture on her screen of a vibrant young professional. This was Maria, his previous star employee. He had her transferred to the Dubai office after she questioned his financials. I'm so terribly sorry, I managed to say. She looked at me, her eyes mirroring my own disillusionment. When I found out he used your joint funds for Stella's bonus, I was furious at you. I couldn't understand why you were complicit while my daughter was pushed out. I was speechless. But the evidence your lawyer presented explained it. You didn't replace her. You were just the next phase of his plan. You're not a casualty. You are his successor. For the first time since that terrible day last August, a flicker of peace settled in me. Sophie drove me home. The 20-minute drive from the loop to my new apartment felt endless. She held my hand as we left the garage. My mother texted, "You are free." The lights of Chicago blurred past the window. I closed my eyes, imagining a sun-filled nursery that would never be built. When I opened them, the skyline was still there. 3 months later, a feature article reshaped my world. My new firm, Sanctuary Design, was profiled in a major architectural journal on October 2nd, 2024. By October 12th, we were the most talked about new consultancy on the Gold Coast. We landed over $60,000 in contracts that week. My business partner called me at dawn. "Olivia, it's working. You're giving people back their safe spaces and it's resonating." I cried, not for the money, but for the story. My story, not Sophie's, not the lawyer's, not the media's, mine. On October 22nd, I was a guest on a popular podcast. The host asked the question everyone was thinking: how do you rebuild when your own architect tries to demolish your life? I leaned toward the microphone. I survived because a mentor named Evelyn reminded me of my own blueprint. I survived because I trusted my intuition. And I survived because I refused to let him design my future. The episode went viral. By the next day, we were a trending topic. On October 28th, I took another step. I launched the Keystone Initiative, a charity to help people escape financial abuse. The initiative provided free financial planning and microgrants from $500 to $5,000 for women needing a new start. I seeded it with half of my settlement, $750,000. My sister took the role of CFO. We brought on a team of brilliant female lawyers. I was building something that would have been impossible while I was with Liam. My therapist, Dr. Anya Sharma, remarked, "You're creating the emergency exits you wish you'd had. The value of that is immeasurable." I promoted the launch relentlessly online. By December, we had raised over $200,000 in donations. One woman sent me a note: "Your podcast pushed me to finally look at my own finances. My husband controlled everything. I felt trapped. Now I see an escape route." I read her words over and over. On November 21st, we held a benefit at the gallery in River North. We auctioned off 210 pieces of art. A patron showed me a photo of her cousin lost to domestic violence. "Thank you for giving us a platform," she said softly. Later that night, a man approached me. He was handsome, with warm eyes and a relaxed grin. "Hi," he said. "My name is Aaron. I know this is forward, but what you're doing here, it's deeply meaningful to me." "How so?" I asked. "My own dad was unfaithful. It tore our home apart. But building this future with you, with our child on the way, it felt like I was finally breaking the pattern. This was for us." I was stunned for a moment and simply said, "I know." He offered a reassuring, confident smile. "Do you think we're ready for this?" I considered it, then answered, "Yes." We chose June 10th to start trying for a baby in our Lincoln Park home. Our life seemed perfect for 3 years. Liam was a celebrated Chicago architect. His sister Chloe was 27, enmeshed in his company, and always slightly too intrusive. His mother had abandoned his father in March of 2001, the same month I lost my own mother. "This is unbelievable," I said, "this entire life with you. I worry it isn't real." "I feel that way too," Liam said, smiling. "But maybe we're just two people who found each other and are building our family. Our baby shower was the next week. We hosted it at the Art Institute of Chicago. My sister Sophie joined us. She squeezed my arm and whispered, "Are you truly happy, Liv?" I assured her, "Yes, 100%. "Is he good to you?" she insisted. "He's perfect. We are so completely safe." I looked over at Liam, then back to my sister. "This is where I belong." On October 30th, I checked our joint accounts. Our spending hit $243,000, including Liam's business expenses. The total was over $360,000. We had already finished the nursery and sponsored 2 charity balls. More than 50 RSVPs had arrived for the charity ball. I sat on the sofa in our glass-walled sunroom and cried, not from joy, but from a sudden cold dread. Sophie had texted me, "You deserve this. You worked so hard to build this life, but always check the blueprints." I saved that text. On November the 5th, 2024, while setting up our new family cloud storage for the baby, I saw a folder that made my heart stop. Project Lakeside, Private Residential Designs. The folder was from an exclusive development firm. The first file was a saved note. It said, "For L and S, our new horizon." My hands shook as I clicked through the images. I knew Liam was mentoring a young architect named Stella. He had mentioned her only once, back in 2021, calling it a mentorship. He said she transferred to their Berlin office. A notification from his synced tablet told a different story. A joint investment account opened on February 14th, 2024, with a $1.5 million transfer. A fired partner's warning echoed in my head. "The numbers don't lie. Get the truth." I hung up and called my sister, Sophie. She answered on the first ring. "He's buying a penthouse with her," I whispered, my voice cracking. It was never about his career. I retained a lawyer that October. "I will do whatever it takes," I told her. For months, I researched Stella. She joined his firm in 2020. She was 28, a gifted cybersecurity expert. Her sister Amelia said Chloe had grown distant after meeting Ethan. She stopped visiting her family on weekends. Ethan claimed she was just consumed by her art gallery. Amelia believed him. In March of 2023, Ethan bought her a new studio space. Amelia saw the deed. Ethan called it an anniversary present. On Chloe's birthday, Amelia posted a photo of her wearing a vintage watch. The official story was that it was a family heirloom. A pregnant wife, a powerful husband, a devastating betrayal. Ethan had funneled over $500,000 through shell corporations that year. Chloe always felt something was off, but at 32, she was trying to support her sister. Nobody would listen until the lies began to surface. In August of 2023, Chloe saw a legal notice on Ethan's desk. It reminded her of her own controlling ex. A charming manipulator, hidden assets, a secret life. She ran a deep background check that September. The search uncovered a secured cloud server registered under a holding company. Inside was a folder of communications from 2022 to 2023. An unsent draft from January 12, 2023 said, "Once A is gone, the company and the wealth will be ours. This baby won't tie me down. I'll finally be free." The life insurance policy was activated on May 30th, 2023, just weeks after their first IVF treatment succeeded. It all unraveled with a $5,000 alert from an exclusive baby boutique. The problem was, I hadn't spent it. My investigator dug into Julian's financials from Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2024. His investor trip to Dallas was a lie. He was at a downtown condo he owned through a shell company. His business partner in Houston, who had backed his story, confessed everything in 2025. He admitted Julian had threatened his career. Julian forces your loyalty. I feared what he could do. A new audit of his 2021 startup funds found it. He had disguised years of payments to Isabel's name, funding her entire life. We had the confrontation on December 2nd, 2024, at our Westlake Hills home. His mother, Genevieve, predictably shielded him. Julian's legal team had prepped him for the family meeting. He feigned total shock. My sister Clara was the first to speak, detailing Julian's isolating tactics. She wept as she told everyone how he'd pushed me to quit my career and alienated me from my oldest friends. He nearly erased the sister I knew, Clara said. Our investigator then presented the photos and bank statements. The room went dead quiet. My mother in law let out a sharp gasp. On December 18th, I presented my side. My attorney had me outline the web of financial deceit and the luxury condo he'd bought for his mistress. The isolation, the gaslighting, the financial control, I declared. This wasn't a mistake. This is who he is. His lawyers argued it was a misunderstanding, but the family wasn't buying it. On January 12th, 2025, they sided with me completely. On January 20th, I handed him his sentence. My permanent absence. Added to his 41 years of narcissism, Julian Croft was now a ghost to me. He wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't look at Clara. He just stared at the rug. I didn't feel rage or triumph, just a deep, hollow quiet. On February 11th, 2025, I went back to the house I grew up in. I was finally out of his orbit. Clara was there on the porch swing. We stood looking at the old Tudor. It was a memorial for the woman I'd been. "I'm so proud of you," Clara whispered, "for fighting back, for demanding the truth." I shook my head. His lies didn't destroy me. They woke me up. I just wish I'd listened to myself sooner. Clara squeezed my hand. "You did. You made sure the entire world sees him clearly. That's how we stop them, by refusing to keep their secrets." We stayed there a little longer. We left some flowers for my old life. Then we turned and left it behind. In March of 2025, I took my son Leo and Clara to the Amalfi Coast. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid when the plane took off. I slept soundly. I gazed out the window and thought of the wreckage he'd caused, of Isabel, of the endless lies, of my lawyer and sister, and of everyone who saw the truth before I was ready to. After we passed through the airport, Clara took my arm. "Eleanor, are you happy?" I glanced down at my son and smiled. "Yes, I finally know I am." The settlement money started a foundation, which now provides legal aid to over 900 women. We raised almost $4 million. By June of 2025, I was working as an art architect again, having opened a small design studio in Denver. My friend Alex asked if I wanted to be his roommate. I said yes. That toxic marriage and the man who shattered my world taught me three essential things. Your gut feeling is your guardian angel. Your voice is someone else's rescue. And leaving is never the end. It's the beginning of everything. For anyone listening, these are the lessons from my broken home. First, you must trust that inner alarm. It's a sacred gift. I ignored it, desperate to believe in our perfect Austin life. Don't repeat my error. When he starts hiding money or making excuses to keep you from family, you need to leave. That feeling is trying to save you. Second, you have to speak up. I survived for a purpose far greater than myself. I was meant to be a cautionary tale. A partner's betrayal is a unique kind of wound because it comes from the one person you gave everything to. Revenge is an empty pursuit. True healing comes from accountability. When the person you love is your biggest threat, speaking out isn't weak, it is your ultimate act of survival. Don't suffer in silence, as I did for 5 long years. Your experience could be another person's roadmap to safety. Third, escaping is a rebirth, not a death. Pain isn't a life sentence, it is the energy for your next chapter. Leaving Julian felt like the end of the world, but it led me to my true calling. I found a real partner, and I remembered my own power. Please let my pain be your permission. Don't ignore your doubt when his colleague jokes about his attractive new intern. Don't wait for someone to tell you about the expensive gifts for his new protege. Act, leave, get support. If my story helps you, please pass it on. Let me know if you ever ignored your own instincts. Subscribe for more stories like this, altered for privacy, but shared to serve as a warning. Thank you for listening. Be aware that future episodes may contain dramatized scenes for impact. If that's not for you, we understand. Be well, be brave, and trust your gut.